Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite Dark Sorcerer here, and I wanted to do the next segment tonight of possession. As I stated before, a lot of things have been coming to me as of late, and I wanted to discuss the different types of possession and, most importantly, the attributes of them from both a left hand and a right hand path practice. All right. Now, I already did the first one, which discussed the viewpoints of demonic possession. Okay. So now I wanted to take it a step further and bring into context the next stage, which is spiritual possession. Okay. That of the way it's perceived from the mundane eyes. Okay. And this is going into haunted possessions, okay? Not just locations or homes, okay? It could even be animal possession, okay? We all know that in the Bible, if we want to start with the right hand again, the right hand path again, we can go into the Bible and it says that, and I quote, that he came across a deaf man, a deaf and mute man who was possessed by multiple people, okay, multiple spirits. And the funny thing is the amusing thing about this is that it said that he had heard about this man, not that he came across him, but that he had heard about him and then went to him. And it said that the spirit, or in this case, spirits said, "Let us go into the swine." So he went into the swine after declaring his name as being Legion. Okay, this is in the Gospels, the New Testament. But what about the Old Testament? Okay, where it talks about witchcraft, where it talks about necromancy, and where it gets into divination and possession. Okay, which are the four classifications of what witchcraft is. Okay, and the practices thereof. It's not just one of these things, it's all of the above. So you have to take the good and the bad and the ugly all in one whole setting. So because I discussed witchcraft before in a series on both my channel and that of Dark Sorcery, and then I just decided to do this just last night, okay, or the night before, where I discussed this. Okay, so why don't we get into this next segment? Okay, now the first thing you have to understand is when we're talking about haunted locations or haunted possessions, okay? And I want to show you something, okay? Something like this, okay? This is a martial art self-defense tool that is basically non-lethal, even though it can be used for lethal means if you know how to do it, okay? This is actually pure silver, okay? And as I discussed in my witchcraft series, silver has a lot to do with demons, okay? In some cases, it's a protective agent. Other cases, it can be used to protect a sorcerer or a sorceress, okay? But if we take, say, for an example, Astaroth, who is the Duke, the Grand Duke, and he's third in command. He's part of the unholy trinity if you follow Satanism, the Grimoire traditions, where it has Lucifer, Belial, or not Belial, but Beelzebub, and then Astaroth in that order. These are the top three beings of the underworld. Now, Astaroth's breath is said to be so putrid and horrid that it would be like daggers piercing the practitioner's skin, the summoner's skin. So it's said that a pure silver ring pressed up against or held up against your cheek will protect you. But these things can be used for various different means. And it's not just this. You consider in this little bag, I have a few items. Quartz crystal, good for protection, offensive magics, can trap a spirit in it as well. The bloodstone, a phylactery, similar, if not the very nature of the Philosopher's Stone. Now, keep in mind with the Philosopher's Stone, there are many different descriptions and depictions of what it is. Some consider it an alchemical symbol, much like that of transformation. Others consider it an actual stone. Few consider it a gem that was forged through fire and ice. Figure it out for yourselves on that one and go with what you believe. Okay? And then you have an altar coin. An altar coin is something that you can carry. It's like a mini, how should I say this? It's a mini altar, if you wish. You can set it up as such. More so, this thing can be used as a penance. It can be used as a practitioner's get out of jail free or a connection to a specific deitas, a demon. A chosen path, such as Satanism, necromancy, demonolatry. Okay? Even demonolatry itself. Ironic how many paths and root workings that this has to do with. Not just paganism or Wiccan or shamanism, because every one of these traditions uses a pentagram, including that of the Kabbalah and Hermetics. It's not only a sign of the 5 pillars, but it is also the 5 elements. Ironic, we're right back to the three books of occult philosophy by Agrippa, where he describes the 7 rare metals, gems, planetary figures, astrology. And it's ironic because of the fact that these items can literally house a spirit. It can literally house a trapped soul. You consider, let me just put these back in my pocket here. You consider that in certain religions, you can go out and purchase a soul. Okay? Purchase someone's soul through the family members. A lot of the time they're in such grief that they don't know what they're doing, but they're willing to sign if it has something to do with their fallen loved one. Yeah, it's a Bokor thing. But guess what? It's not just Bokor or voodoo. It's also Santeria. It's also Pedo Mayembe. It is also Quimbanda, Satanism, witchcraft in general that you can do this with. Okay? Especially if you're interested in baneful sorcery. Okay? And this is where we're going to get into haunted applications. Haunted locations or haunted objects can be placed, can be literally purchased or even gathered from natural elements, okay, natural locations, such as a quartz crystal, a rock, a phylactery of any kind, a gem. It can house your knowledge, your spirit, even your power, okay? Or you can attach a spirit for that purpose for either protection, offensive or defensive magics. You can even take the soul of an executed murderer, somebody who has died in a violent manner, and place that soul on that object. Or you can place it on another human being that you wish to suffer the same mentality, the same fatality. Okay? And this is why witchcraft, specifically that of possession, is something so it's considered to be baneful, it's considered to be dangerous, is because of the many uses that it can be employed for. In this case, let's look at some of the applications. Number one, divination purposes of divining the future, the past, the present, to gaining answers to certain issues, to basically torment an enemy, to gain riches, power, money, or even to worship them. Have you ever wondered why so many prefer the left hand path these days? Why they like working with demons? Because they're hoping for that quick fix, like a junkie looking for their next hit of heroin. But in this case, it's not narcotics. No, it's black magic, sorcery. In this case, it's demons. It's working with them. It's worshiping them at the same time as learning from them. It's almost to the state of obsession. And a lot of the mundane can't tell the difference between an obsession within a psychological obsessed state compared to one of those that are mentally imbalanced or, simply put, possessed. Now, when a priest or of the Vatican is employed to go to investigate a location or an object, I mean, you take, let's go with what's some of the names of some famous exorcists. Let's go with Bob Larson, okay? Bob Larson is a profound, self-acclaimed exorcist, okay? He has claimed that he has performed at least 40 to 60 exorcisms over 40 years, okay? That's 40 years. That's quite a big time. And he claims that there's more out there. But he's not the only one. You look at Ed and Lorraine Lauren, for an example. This married couple, he was a Christian, a Catholic to be precise. She was a seer. Both of them worked for the Vatican. They got married, had a family. And yet they've investigated numerous accounts and actually written books on these topics. Not just had movies made, such as Ouija board or The Haunting of such and such a place. No, or even Annabelle for that matter. They've done a lot, there's no doubt. But even the Archdiocese has said that there's multiple increases of demonic activity due to the rise of occultism. They've been doing, how should I say this, interviews, I guess is the best terminology to use, where they're beginning to find younger priests who are dedicated to the cause to become exorcists themselves. Every religion worldwide has some form of baneful magics or sorceries that deal with demonic possession. In this case, they use them as an excuse to retain power. This is psychological in nature, whereas actual practitioners of witchcraft are in it for the power. They're in it for the knowledge, the self-evolution, and the rise of oneself for their own personal gain. So I thought we'd take a couple minutes and take a look at some of the notes I've been taking. Okay. And I actually went into several locations today while I was contemplating this next video. And I wanted to do it from multiple perspectives. So there's actually a Christian. He goes by the name Dr. Tom Knotts. Okay. And you can find him right on YouTube. Okay. Now, in his case, he did a video called Warlocks. Okay. Warlock types. Okay. And he names two of them, purebloods and blue bloods. Okay. Consider these two hereditary compared to book learned. Okay. The wannabes. Consider, how should I say this? The best way that he put it was that a pure blood is a hereditary family line. They can trace their lineage back to Babylon, okay? But they don't hold power unless, in his words, the one true God allows it, okay? Whereas the blue bloods are these types that are wannabes, they're dabblers, they're the book learned who it supposedly, according to him, it takes at least 10 generations of hereditary family lineage and dedication within sorcery to even become a pureblood warlock. Okay. Now, he goes into talking about how powerful both of these are. And because we're talking about possession, I thought that this fit because I watched this video a while back and I thought it was pretty interesting, but also amusing because warlocks are part of witchcraft. They're male practitioners. They're equivalent to that of the witch. It's only due to certain white light practices that they view from a Scottish or Anglo-Saxon root of etymology that they're seen as being oath breakers, betrayers, and liars. Okay. Whereas other authors, such as, let's go with Hans Holzer for an example, considers a warlock to be a solitary practitioner who masters conjuration, basically whatever magic he can get his hands on, and considers it mostly to be solitary male practitioners. Okay. And based off that, individual's knowledge can be either used for good or evil, to harm or to heal. Okay. Which kind of goes along with what Tom Knotts has said in his video. But then you got Christopher Pinziak, okay, through what is it? The Temple of Outer Witchcraft, if I remember correctly. It was page 7 or 8. It was either, I want to say it's page 7 or page 8, and then going to page 27. And he classifies the term warlock as being just another title given. Think of it as a Luciferian perspective of different demons, different methods of being just another mask. Okay. And his viewpoint, the definition of warlock is considered to be like a sorcerer, a mage, a sage, a medicine man. Okay. Stuff like that. Okay. So the way he put it is purebloods are more dangerous within the form of spirituality, whereas the blue bloods are more physically dangerous. Okay. Physically dangerous. Okay. Now, keep in mind, we're also talking about a guy who's also a practicing Christian that's doing this. Okay. Not joking. He's literally a Christian, and he's willing to pray to prove that point. But out of all the Christians I've seen who have talked about occultism, he's actually one that is actually down to earth and takes a scientific research type method to his approach, he doesn't just get to know practitioners and learn from them their history and their beliefs, but he actually does his research, okay? Which is something that is rare when it comes to Christians. Now, according to him, the root of the term or etymology of warlock means that a warlock is locked in battle against oneself, okay? Basically against their self, and they're trying to break free. They're trying to, get out into the open, okay, and stop tripping themselves up and stuff like that. Now, purebloods work with angels and spiritual powers spiritually to become more potent in their magics. Basically, consider it selfishness or ultimate sin, okay? Which is to go against the Abrahamic God. And I'm going to get into this in just a minute because I really want to get into this aspect because I went into other sources as well. Now, the blue bloods take 10, as I said, 10 generations and all that stuff. So that's the end of that page there for notes. And like I said, that was Dr. Tom Knotts that actually went into that aspect. Now, when we look up the terminology of warlock, it means oathbreaker, betrayer, a male witch. The term giver, or giving, I should say, to the one who breaks their covenant, their oath. Okay. And in most cases, in the old days, it was considered to be a death sentence. Whereas now you're just basically shunned like Christians do to those who dare to question, okay? Or to go outside of a covenant to actually learn, okay? And I really found that quite interesting. I really did when I first learned it. And Anglo-Saxon means purity, you know, and divinity, whereas Scottish means oath. Okay, and this was actually done by Blaze Lee Dragon. Okay, and you can actually look him up on YouTube as well. He's actually a Wiccan. He's into Wicca. Okay, and he's very, very knowledgeable, and I do recommend him because he actually knows his shit. Um, he's actually one of the few that I would actually recommend to people. Okay, and if I recommend somebody, it means I've done my research into what they're talking about and have found them to be plentiful. Okay. Let's see. Nikki and the Morrison's Pagan Circle. How you doing? Yep. That's magic. Oh no. Sorry, that's not magic. Magic's the black one. This one here, Nikki, is Harley. Okay, not the motorcycle. No, actually, no. She was actually named after the motorcycle. When I looked at my son's mom and she said she named her that, I was go, oh, cool. So you named her after Harley Quinn? Nope. She named this one after the motorcycle. So, anyways, when we get into the old world, and we go into, say, for an example, Gaelic, the war, WOER, or WAER, means truth, faith, pledge, and oath. Loga means liar and breaker. Okay. In Scottish, around 600 CE, Christian writers, okay, and I'll get into this in just a second, but also around 900 CE, we see it again where it roughly translates into deceiver. Okay, the deceiver of self, deceiver of others. Now, we know that Christians like to talk big about familiar spirits. Okay, we also know that they like to talk about the devil, the great Satan. Okay, especially if they're Islamic. But here's the kicker: They also talk a lot about the Antichrist. They talk about Satan and how he's the great warlock who will train other warlocks, such as witches and warlocks, sorcerers and sorceresses, into practicing black magic, getting into spiritual warfare, getting into baneful magics like curses and hexes. Okay, and you can actually look this up on Amazon, and you're going to get a lot of Christians that talk about warlocks. They're going to talk about witchcraft, and they're going to use scripture to do this. Okay, and they're so convinced that they're right when in fact they are completely wrong, and a simple Google search can blow their theories right out of the fucking water. Okay, and I'm not joking. Okay, but when we get into the actual Hebrew language, okay, which is where the whole JCI etymologies came from, between the Hebrew and the Jewish etymologies. Okay, we see Queezer, which is the Hebrew word for witchcraft, and this is basically mostly used throughout the Bible within divination. Okay, divination within the Bible. It's used for divining out of the spirit world. Okay, and what's interesting to note about this is that there's numerous scriptures that actually show this, and I'll get into that in just a minute as well. And what's ironic about this is that the Bible, Christians hold on to this Bible so harshly and defend it so harshly that they're willing to give up everything to defend it. Okay, and I mean everything. Their beliefs, they're willing to sacrifice friends, family, everything. If I told you half the shit that I've seen dealing with apostolics, Pentecostals, Jehovah Witnesses, Catholics, you'd shit your pants and probably sleep with a goddamn nightlight on. Okay? That's all I got to say there. But there was one Christian author that really caught my attention. And this was Andrew Womack. Okay? Back when I first got into Christianity, to become a minister, I was reading down through this book in the library, and I came across a reference to this guy's book. It was called, at the time, I didn't realize that he was a Christian, but he is. He's an evangelist. Okay. And the name of the book was Mind, Body, and Soul. Okay. Very good book. And how he did what no other author has ever done. Okay. As far as I can tell, from a Christian perspective, is actually show the links between the three: the mind, the body, and the soul. Okay, think of it as the spirit, body, and the mind. Okay. Now, in his viewpoint, the mind and the soul are two different things. Okay, and he clearly shows this throughout scriptures. More so, that was more intriguing is the fact that the belief in something can be so strong that it becomes an obsession, and it's here, the mind. Okay, you know it so heartedly that it's also here in the soul. Okay, the ka. Okay, and if we go into actual scripture, we can see this within three aspects of how they claim that the spirit or demonic possession, the familiar spirits, can infest an individual within the form of witchcraft, occultism. Okay, and if you draw a pentagram, and this is something I want you to draw. Okay, is draw a pentagram. You have at the top, at the pointy end, relatives. You have idolatry, and then you have sexuality. Okay, and I want you to keep in mind these three things, because this is their whole logic behind the Bible, especially when it comes to spiritual warfare. Witches, warlocks, and the spiritual mind are used by the Antichrist, aka Satan. And you can find this in Galatians 5:19. This is chapter 5, verse 19, which is basically considered the most horrible of sins. Okay, and that is basically six things: idolatry, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, and witchcraft. Now, you'll notice that the first four is actually based around sexuality. And the way that they believe in this manner is that you look at the ultimate sin of corruption. Okay. When we look at corruption within the Bible, we see how the serpent tempted Eve and she fell for it and ate of the apple and then gave it to Adam. Okay. And this is considered the original sin. Okay. And that's basically what they base this stuff upon because it was based off sexuality. And because when they became aware, they realized that they were nude. So they made fig leaves. Okay. And it sparked a whole chain of events. Namely, that once they were banned from the Garden of Eden, they had three sons. Okay. Three sons: Cain, Abel, and Set. Okay. Now, ironically, Adam and Eve are considered to be the first humans. They had three sons together. Three sons. So then Cain, jealous of his brother, murders his brother, committing murder, and became known as the father of murders. Okay? This is this is basically the betrayal aspect. He betrayed his own flesh and blood. He betrayed his oath and his allegiance and was marked with a curse. Okay? And what's ironic even further is that when he left his land, he suddenly had a wife of his own and started having kids. Now, if this came from Adam and Eve, who were created in the spirit first, and then corporeal, and then their God put Adam to sleep, removed a rib, and created female, why would he have to make the female twice unless Lilith was the first wife of Adam? You see my point there. We're dealing with spiritualism. We're dealing with the spiritual aspects of hauntings. And we all know about how Lilith is viewed. She's known as the night hag. She's known as a child murderer. She is known as the how should I say this? The consort of both Samael, the venom of God in Hebrew, by the way, and that of Satan. Okay. Ha Satan in Hebrew. Okay. HA dash Satan, or El Shaitan in Islamic traditions. And it's kind of ironic that if you go into Genesis, you're going to see how a guy tries to give the townspeople, the men of the town, his virgin daughters, but yet they go for the male angels that came to this one town. And it became known as Sodom and Gomorrah. We see it throughout the entire Old Testament, right up into the New Testament, especially in Hebrews 13, verse 4, where it says to keep the marriage bed holy. Romans chapter 1, where it talks about men laying with men and women laying with women. Basically, the whole gays, lesbians, and that all other bullshit that people use as an excuse as being sinful. Okay? Now, personally, I have a lot of gay friends, and I don't care if they're gay. I don't care if they're bisexual. I don't care if they're transsexual. Hell, I don't even give a damn if they're asexual. You know, I really don't care. They're cool people. But, anyways, now if we take these six things, we can go into Exodus 7 and 8, the Pharaoh's magicians. Okay. We go into Numbers chapter 22, Balaam's curses. 2 Kings chapter 9, Jezebel's witchcraft. Daniel's chapter 5, Belshazzar's soothsayers. 1 Samuel 28, Saul and the witch of Endor. Okay? And what's ironic is that when we talk about witchcraft and performing miracles such as raising the dead raising the dead for divination purposes or conjuration purposes such as necromancy, okay, such as possession. We also see another aspect of how in the New Testament in the we see the rising of Lazarus, okay, back from the dead. But we also see the centurion's daughter who was dead, and there's God, Jesus Christ, brought her back to life. This is considered necromancy. We also see where he calmed the weather and the seas. This is called hydromancy and aeromancy. Okay. We know that chiromancy was performed because when Jesus took two of his disciples up to the top of the mountain, he opened up a rift. We know this is Jacob's ladder because the scripture clearly says that they saw angels ascending and descending behind him, much like a ladder, and this became known as Jacob's ladder. Okay. Now this is spiritualism, like I said, and this is a type of possession, like a trance. When you get into oneomancy, okay, the dream magic, you get into astral projection, you get into other forms of sorcery, you're going to see all of this stuff. Okay, and it's a way for power. So, would this not be classified as miracles? Now, let's look at the Hebrew miracle. Okay, Mirikel is how you spell miracle in Hebrew. Okay, much like the how should I say this? The Hebrew word for witchcraft, which is Kaiser. Okay, Quser. Okay, and then you have Deuteronomy. Okay, and a lot of Christians tend to put a lot of emphasis on this aspect, and I want you to understand this why. So I went over to my bookshelf and I pulled off the Teacher's Reference Edition, and this is I want to say this is a King James, if I remember correctly. And in Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 10 through 12, Christians literally consider this the number one go-to for their argument when it comes to why witchcraft was considered to be so dangerous. Okay. And I'm going to just bring this up real fast. Deuteronomy 18. And it's 11 and 12. Okay. But I'm going to start on verse 10 so you can actually understand this. Okay. Actually, why don't we go back to verse 9? Okay. When thou art come into the land which thy God, Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times. Okay, this is someone who is a seer, someone who is a medium, somebody who uses things like the Ouija board, cartomancy, runes, necromancy within the form of conjuration or reanimation. Okay, for those of you who do not know, or an enchanter or a witch. Now, an enchanter is very similar to that of a witch, especially if you count on the satanic witchcraft, where it's the art of seduction. Okay, the art of seduction, the art of seducing the opposite sex or even the same sex to get what you want. Okay, women in this case do it naturally, by the way. Just to let you know, a warlock has to use psychology and really delve into the persona. Or a charmer, like I said, a warlock. Or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that for for all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord, and because of these abominations, the Lord thy God does drive them out from before thee. Okay. Now, what's ironic about this is that no matter where you go within the Bible itself, or even in the Quran, the Hebrew Bible, the Jewish Bible, the Torah itself, you're going to see everything from divination. We know that Nicodemus, for an example, was an astrologer. He was a seer. He was somebody who used divination to foretell things. And according to mythology, he actually predicted over 2,000 things, to which to date only a small handful has come to pass. And yes, I own the complete book of Nicodemus's predictions. Okay, so I can actually go right into it and bring it up. So, but then you've also got where you have King Sol, the most loyal being, person, did what he was told by his god and ended up fighting the land of giants, the Turks, okay, for like 40 years. And when he didn't get any, he had so much blood on his hands that his god basically abandoned him. Okay, would not tell him what to do or even give him any advice. He was basically white walled. Okay, so what he did was he sent out his top advisors, his top soldiers to find the most powerful seer, the soothsayer. Okay, and what they came back with was the Witch of Endor. So he went underneath the cloak of night to her, and she saw Fuller's through his facade and basically called him out on his shit. Why are you trying to ensnare me? And ended up doing necromancy through blood sorcery and through divination and conjuration aspects. Okay, so this is a type of haunting. It is a type of accursed items. Okay, so a corpse has been used in many cultures, ranging from Russia to Germanic, all the way to Greek, even. I mean, when you look up the term nigromancy, it means the art of black magic, the practice thereof of black magic. And it's used through chiromancy, which is spiritual conjuration, divining purposes. Now you incorporate this into necromancy, which is Greek. Necro meaning corpse or dead, and you have mancy meaning practice. Okay, the art of or the practice thereof of corpse divination. Okay, and we can actually go even further and go into the Latin variation of this. Okay, now keep in mind that most people don't confer between the Greek and the Latin, and this is something I've discovered most recently that is kind of, how should I say this? Within the last year and a half, I found that it is very mind blowing in this area because of the fact that people tend to get stuck on one topic and they don't branch out. You consider bringing the dead back to life has been used through medical practices going all the way back to the 16th century, 17th century, even. Most people don't even know that. But yet, if we go back even further, back to the Dark Ages, we know that it's associated, let's say the 15th century, and we see where it's associated with illusionists. We see where it's associated with vampirism, another form of corpse divination, the death toll, type thing, where they have to feed on blood, or the blood associated with necromancy staves off the necrosis, okay, which is the rot that practitioners of necromancy live with. But if we go back to, say, the 13th century, we also see the Munich manuscript where it's associated with illusionists, where a wizard can bring forth spirits. We see where he can bring forth feasts and armies and castles and stuff like that to impress people in a state of illusion, much like modern day practitioners such as David Blaine or Chris Angel. Now, personally, I'm a big fan of Chris Angel because, let's face it, I mean, that guy's a freaking freaking himself. But he literally will blow your mind away with half the shit that he does, whereas David Blaine just basically pushes himself into certain, well, let's just say weird things like bringing fish, from his stomach, you know, or staying in a bubble full of water and breathing out of a freaking scuba tank for like 8 days or something. You know, he's really not up to that level of Chris Angel. But even if you get into grimoire traditions, you're going to see how spirits can be summoned through symbols and runes. You can even attach them to items such as a spirit box. A spirit box is, or a cauldron, a nganga, okay, is seen as a house of a spirit that's willing to work with you. But yet, if you attach it to, say, a home or to, say, an item, such as, oh, I don't know, let's say, for example, a printer, a mirror, let's say, for example, a book, okay, it becomes an accursed item. And whoever takes that item without your permission or touches that item without your permission becomes accursed. The curse is basically placed upon them. And depending on what that curse is, this defines what happens to the individual. Okay. And and there's a lot of practitioners of Christianity on YouTube that really discuss their own encounters with warlocks, with spiritual beings, with spirits of familiarity, witchcraft, and such. But when you come right down to it, do they actually get into details? You see my point. Look at John Ramos for an example. A prime example. He did a video a while back that he claimed to grew up in the occult. He claimed to grow up in Santeria and then Brujeria, and then finally getting into Palo Mayumbi. Okay. And then supposedly, the fantasy role play comes in where he goes out, he terrorizes the community. Oh, but wait, this one community is he can't get into because it's blocked by prayer. The Christians, right? And then he goes into it even further, and he meets a girl, likes her. She ends up going to church. Oh, they're harmless, yada yada yada. And then all of a sudden he attacks a priest, and 20 people get on top of him, and he ends up going, "Oh, Jesus is Lord." Woohoo! Bullshit. Okay. Every video this guy does, he claims to be an ex something. Okay, either an ex Satanist, an ex Luciferian, an ex witch, an ex Santeria, Palo Mayumbi practitioner. He claims to be an ex something. an expert on something that he's had some form of contact with. But yet, if you look at any of his videos, he doesn't go into details at all. There's a lot of books out there and have had a lot of books out there over the last 20 to 30 years that talk about blood sorcery, that talk about divination, okay, divination, such as scrying, such as conjuration, such as invocation and evocation, okay? Anybody can go to a bookshop and pick this up and go, okay, I want to talk about this in a video. Anybody can do that. But yet, a true practitioner is going to go into actual detail with you. They're going to go into a lot of different sources. They're going to go into actual practices and to tell you what you can do with these things. Okay? John Ramos is a Christian. He started his own church, and around that same time, he started these videos to gain popularity, much like the diocese, much like Bob Larson, who's been doing exorcisms for a total of 40 years. But people forget that he was also originally a news anchor. He literally interviewed the first family of the Church of Satan. He had an interview and actually showed respect to Anton Zandelavay. But yet, when his daughter Zena and her husband Nicholas came onto his show, he was blatantly disrespectful to them and would not let them answer any questions. And this is something you can literally look up right on YouTube yourself and watch. Okay. Now, most recently, I came across some videos of Bob Larson trying to do exorcisms on a couple of, well, let's call them a young couple. Okay. Probably around late teens, early 20s. Okay. One was receptive to the exorcism, and the other one he claimed didn't partake because of the fact that she was doing it for him and not herself. Okay. And this was actually done on Dr. Phil. You gotta love Dr. Phil. And you can imagine just by what I just told you about Bob Larson being on there and trying to do these exorcisms on this young couple, what Dr. Phil's perception is. Okay. So remember what I said in the last video, psychological. A lot of people have it here. It's not physical spiritual domination by a spirit. It's not voluntary bringing a spirit into yourself. No. There's also that of psychological issues. And today, people are literally brought up into the church and believing their propaganda. So they have no time to actually get into something else and see if they actually enjoy it. As soon as my son was born, his mother wanted to take him to church. Literally, just take him to church. Do you know how many kids I've seen, newborns come in? Oh, I want to baptize them in the name of Jesus Christ. Woohoo! Okay. This is what they do right off the fucking bat. They have no time to get into things like paganism, Buddhism, Zen, shamanism to find out if they like it. They're automatically indoctrinated into the Christian lifestyle. And if you try to bring them into yours, it's a big fuck you. Plain and simple. This is how much controlling factors they have. This is how they're brought up. But it does come down to the individual practice. Okay. I saw there was a radical group that was around this area. Let's just say the minister learned the hard way. Don't piss off a black magician. He not only lost his property that he had purchased and ended up putting $1.5 million into just the sanctuary. Okay. And he had just purchased the upper floors so that he can start a school. Okay. What was funny is, remember how I said accursed objects, haunted places? Well, guess what? This building became such. Why? Because after he came at me and attacked me, I put a curse on that location. I physically, for 2 years, spoke curses. I went into the spiritual realm, spoke curses, and I went far beyond that as well. I didn't just curse the location through multiple different means, but I also cursed him in general. And ironically, with all his talk about how his God is superior, ironically, he lost everything. Everything. The name of this group is called City Reach. Okay, and they're up and down the eastern seaboard. Number one, he lost his building. It became condemned. Okay. Number two, the other business that was in there ended up having to leave because the building was condemned. So his actions literally spread to other locations, to other corporate businesses in that same building. It was deemed unfit for human habitation. Second of all, he was forbidden to have any form of ministry in the city of Bangor and Penobscot County. And third, he lost his daughter and he became divorced. He ended up having to live out of his car doing videos while on the road, all because he chose to attack me. And for the next 2 years, every single night, I cursed that location and him for 2 whole years. It was like 2.5 years to be precise. And you know what's interesting? To this day, it has been roughly 6 years. The place is still sitting vacant. The parking lot is now a parking lot for the sheriff's department, but the building itself sits empty. Empty. Because nobody wants it. Nobody wants to fix it up. Nobody wants to go near it. And because the jail sits right across the street, they decided, why not use it to store all our units? But here, and the funny thing is, it became a haunted location because of the spirits that I called forth. These spirits were attached to this location and to him. This is called a demonic haunting. It is called a demonic haunting of a location, an object, a physical object. In this case, about a 3-story building. Not joking. A 3-story building. And they latch themselves onto him. So no matter where he goes, he's having bad luck. He lost everything in this area. And from what I'm told by others in this area, all his benefactors basically went their own way. Again, leaving him with nothing. Witchcraft, possession, divination, necromancy, sorcery in general, going into cursing through speaking curses, through physical curses, not just speaking curses to that building, into him, through that building, but also going into your inner sanctum, my inner sanctum, and doing it there as well. Going into the spiritual, the nexus, the astral projection, and doing it there. You see, most Christians around this area, they know me by name, but also through reputation, and they leave me alone. Every so often, you get a certain radical group like City Reach. In this case, he was teaching minors to be bullies. He was using everything he could to spread his version of the Bible. And it came back to bite him in the proverbial arse, literally. He thought he was protected and untouchable. I proved him wrong through sorcery, through black magic, through demonic possession. Me. And it's not the first time I've had to use black magic. It's not the first time I've had to utilize what I know. When I was down in Texas, I had to do the same thing, but I had to go about it in a psychological warfare, the art of cognitive warfare, with the Catholic Church, dealing with 3 counties at once. By the time it was said and done, I had everybody against on my side, except for that church and that of the town council. So when we get into spirituality and you start learning the sorcery and how to utilize each thing, you're going to learn that demonic sorcery and possession play a huge part in any form of magic. Okay, it's not just witchcraft, it's in just about every religion worldwide that discusses it in some aspect. Not just in Satanism, not just in necromancy, not just in shamanism, not just in folk tales or old wives' tales. Okay, it's in a lot of different aspects worldwide, which is why a lot of people fear possession. They fear witchcraft because of what it can do. And this is why. This is just 2 examples of why possession is so feared. Okay. And even the archdiocese, like I said in the last video, has proclaimed that so many it's been an uprising within demonic possessions over the last 20 to 40 years. Okay. And they claim it's based around Satanism. They claim that it's due to the uprise of occultism, the interest in occultism. But remember this, a lot of individuals who leave Christianity and go into the left-hand path, they always end up going right back to where they began. Why? Because they feared what they found out. They were afraid, or they got frustrated because they didn't get anywhere, because they were holding on to that JCI perspective and would not learn how to do this stuff. There's a state of humbleism that comes with witchcraft within the occult practices. Unfortunately, you got a lot of showboaters and egotistical, let's just call them people who are more about pride and ego than anything. And they don't know how to humble themselves in front of spirits. They don't know how to humble themselves within the arts or even in their communities. Not everything is blatant. Not everything is in your face. A lot of things can be done through subterfuge, psychological warfare, mind games. Others can be done through physical witchcraft practices, either invocations of willingly bringing spirits into yourself or bringing a spirit and attaching it to an object or a location. Like I showed you earlier, items that can be utilized for placing a spirit of say for an example, another practitioner, or say an angelic or a demon, a djinn, an ugan, and place them on that item or that location, or perhaps even taken somebody who has perished from a very violent or painful death, take their soul and attach it on somebody that you want to destroy, okay, through baneful magic, a destruction ritual, okay? But you can also utilize spirits in other forms as well, okay? Like I said yesterday in the last video. And my next video, I'm going to get into this aspect and kind of just break everything down so that you have an understanding. You see, I've been talking a lot about the left hand path and the right hand path aspects of witchcraft and possession. Okay. And my next video is going to answer a question from a woman that has come to me. Okay. And she and her mother are tired of living with the type of spirit. And I'm going to be talking about what you can do to actually get the spirit to move on, or to send them to how should I say this? Go back to whence they came. If it's a curse, I'm going to be talking about how to break it. If it's just a matter of an attachment, there's so many different methods that can be utilized, and I'm going to talk about this in the last video, okay, which I will be doing tomorrow, okay? And I really want to talk about this one because this last one is going to be probably about an hour and a half long. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of information and I wanted to save the best for last. So I hope this has been intellectual. I hope it's been enlightening. You can always get in touch with me on Messenger. I may not get back to you right off the bat, but keep in mind, I will get in touch with you. It's a matter of time, when I get a few minutes to actually do it, because I am a very busy man. I do have clients, I have apprentices, I am running my own order, and on top of that, I'm administrating in a lot of groups. And on top of that, I am a full-time minister, and I also work for a coffee shop part-time for 4 days out of the week. So I am a quite busy man, and I'm also writing my first book. Well, actually, it's technically my second book, but this is the one that's going to be published. So with that said, I hope it's been intellectual, enlightening. I want to thank Judy Carter for showing up. I want to thank Nikki and Morrison's Pagan Circle for showing up. And for all of those of you who will show up after this video has been uploaded to YouTube, or finished on YouTube, I should say. I just got to figure out why it's not showing up until the next day on my screen. So, not really sure how that is. I'm not a techno gizmo kind of guy. Give me a tarot card deck in the 15th century setting, I know what I'm doing. I'm a little bit out of my depths in this area when it comes to technology. It's a good thing my better half is a computer genius. That's all I got to say. But have a good night, and until next time, I hope to see you then.